Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Comic Book Wednesday. This is an event that Michael K. Vaughan over at his channel, I'll leave a link to his channel down below, he started on his own, where he's going through his collection of epic collections from Marvel Comics. These are softcover, full-color reprint volumes that Marvel's doing of their back catalog, not sequentially. The epic collections are bouncing all around, different runs in different series, in part so that Marvel can respond to whatever the market wants. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a barrage of Eternals related epic collections, for instance, or Black Knight related epic collections, or Doctor Strange, one of the newest epic collections. I think comes out this week in comic shops or next week, is a Doctor Strange epic collection that is fantastic. The issues it collects are fantastic. Rather than progressing sequentially, which is what the Marvel Masterworks line does. Marvel Masterworks are hardcover editions where they start at X-Men #1 and they're just working their way forward. They start at the very first appearance of Spider-Man and just work their way forward. Every issue in order, every annual in the order that it occurs. Those are different. The epic collections bounce all over, so you can get many eras of a title in the course of a single year. And they're a hit, sales-wise, with Marvel Comics. Marvel has become an extremely woke and openly duplicitous company, so they do their best to hide sales figures, to mask, hide, and lie about sales figures. But their reprint volumes, especially the Epic line, sell better than most of their current floppy issues do, or any of their current collections of their recent floppy issues. Because those issues, those modern runs of most Marvel Comics, were written and drawn specifically, and this is not guesswork. This is openly known. This has been the creators themselves have said this online and in private in things that have been leaked. Those issues that were collected into the later graphic novels from Marvel were written and drawn specifically to antagonize long-term Marvel fans. Specifically to give them things that the creators of those modern issues know they will hate in order to drive them away. And it's largely worked. So I, for instance, know I'd say probably 20 or 22 people who have been Marvel Comics collectors for the whole of the lifespan that I've known them for. And all 22 of them don't buy Marvel Comics anymore. And it's not because they don't have money. It's not because they don't have inclination. It's because they have opened Marvel Comics and seen themselves as the villains, seen themselves talked about when creators do interviews for cable news or whatever as the enemy. We have one creator said 2 years ago, we have a certain die-hard population of old fans clinging on for dear life, and once we get rid of them, it'll be clear sailing. And the business executives at Marvel that don't care anything about comic books don't seem to want to stop that behavior, even though its effect on their business model couldn't be any clearer. But the epic collections do well, except for the group, the members of that targeted group of old style, long-term fans who have just said, it's not just that I'm not going to buy current Marvel Comics anymore because the company is allowing their creators to act this way. I'm not going to buy anything that Marvel makes anymore, even if I want it. Even if it's a reprint of comics from back when Marvel treated its fans well, I'm not going to buy anything. Aside from that group, the Epic collections sell really well because they're selling directly to people who remember when they looked forward to buying Marvel Comics in the shop every week. I certainly don't look forward to buying Marvel Comics in the shop anymore. That habit was broken by my old dogs getting sick and needing me around all the time, and it would have been broken by COVID anyway. But I look every week. I watch a whole bunch of comics channels. I love a whole bunch of comics channels on YouTube. And I look at the listings for new comics online at a whole bunch of different sites every week. And every time I see something that I think is tempting enough to maybe ask Mark Richardson and his long-suffering wife, Deb, to go to their comic shop and get a copy for me, every time they do that, virtually every time they do that, and they go to the bother of putting it in there are packages that go back and forth between the old Stonebuck house and Hyde Cottage on a regular basis. There are packages that go back and forth. We just build packages to send to each other. And every time that I get loose comics in one of those packages, I read them eagerly, and they are terrible. Absolutely terrible. So I don't look forward to any Marvel comics to come on the shelves, but I once did. For many, many, many years I did. And the Epic collections are, when they're good, they are collecting those issues that I read and that I still have here that are fading away to powder. The pages are pulling off the staples, the pages are yellowing, the pages are frittering away at the corners or have jelly sandwich stains in them or Cheez-It dust in them from decades ago. But those Epic collections, it's Frida Yoga. You want to get down, baby? The Epic collections that collect the issues, the runs, the characters, the comic titles that I really love have been few and far between on Epic Wednesdays. Michael K. Vaughan and I, our world's finest collaboration of comic books, they've been few and far between because I made the tactical mistake of letting Michael pick the Epic collections. He has a million of them, so it seemed only right to let him pick them. And oh boy, has he picked a whole bunch of losers. A whole bunch of piles of garbage. Just garbage. To the point where I've come to expect it, and a lot of you have too, as you email me and say, a lot of you have too. You've been very happy. Those of you who didn't know about Michael's channel and found it through mine have been very happy that you did. He does a lot of content, a video every day. So you've been very happy to find that, but it's warmed the cockles of your black little hearts when Michael and I disagree, as we often do, on the runs that he picks. But it's not going to happen today, I'm afraid. He picked a winner today. First of all, he went to my favorite Marvel character, Thor. And he picked this. The Fall of Asgard. This is a Thor Epic collection. The Fall of Asgard. Nice, big, thick thing. And it was a joy to reread this last night and this morning in preparation for this video. It was a joy. Even though it wasn't an unmixed joy. And there are parts of Michael's video, again, I'll leave a link to his video down below. There are parts of his video about this Epic collection that are wrong, that are misguided in the way that you all love to hear. For instance, he says that this is an artist's feast, that this collection is an artist feast, because it starts off with Jack Kirby, moves on for a brief while to Neil Adams, who went on to fame as the artist of Batman, an artist with Denny O'Neil who just remade the character of Batman, and then finishes with John Buscema, who is a great comic book artist, a great Marvel artist, probably best known for his incredibly long run on Conan the Barbarian with Roy Thomas. So Michael used that lineup to say that this is an artist's paradise, but it ain't. The Jack Kirby artwork at the beginning of this Epic collection is absolutely awful. It's absolutely awful. Michael is right to sing the praises of Vinnie Coletta as an inker, but Kirby was less than phoning it in. I don't even know what is the step down from phoning it in. Passenger pigeoning it in? Passenger pigeon? I don't know. One way or another, Kirby's panel work, his detail work is virtually non-existent. He faded out of Thor in the exact same way that he faded out of the Fantastic Four. The last 6 issues that Kirby allegedly has the art credit for in Fantastic Four are awful, artwork-wise, just awful. And the same thing is true in Thor. I could give you many an example, but they are bad. They are just bad, and there's only so much that Vince Coletta can do. I mean, that is just lazy, bad artwork. Just, ugh. Just look at that. Look at that page. The reason that Sif has to crouch over at this bottom panel is because these 4 panels have been wasted. The action of these 4 panels could have been done in 1 panel if the exposition... it's just awful. It's awful Kirby artwork. Kirby at the end of any book is always bad. Always bad. He hits his peak, and then he loses interest and starts phoning things in or passenger pigeoning things in. And then you get to the next part of the artist bonanza that Michael is crying up here, and that's Neil Adams. If ever there was an artist who was not suited for drawing, I would say superhero comics just in general, but certainly something like Thor, it's Neil Adams. His artwork is absolutely horrible. Look at this panel. That is supposed to be Thor. Dude, do you even lift? What is that? I don't know what that is. I know it's supposed to be the Echo. Mephisto is is inspiring this Loki version of Thor. But it's still Thor's body. And oh god, and it just goes on and on like that. The parts that aren't direct Kirby ripoffs are Neil Adams not at his best, not by a long shot. And he got the heave ho. He got the old exit stage left in favor of John Buscema, who was brought on And the book immediately started improving. It helped that by this point Stan Lee had entirely left the writing duties behind. He may have had his name on the issue, but he wasn't writing it anymore, wasn't plotting it anymore. So we get John Buscema doing a few things. There are a few 2 or 1 part issues. Thor, his secret identity is the mortal Dr. Donald Blake. Dr. Donald Blake is contacted by Victor Von Doom, Dr. Doom of the Fantastic Four fame, hoping that that Donald Blake, who is such a renowned surgeon, can heal Dr. Doom's face, which is kind of weird right on its own. You know, if Dr. Doom is truly a victim to such an extent that he's still actively looking for someone to save him, then what? What if he'd been right about Dr. Donald Blake? There's a great sequence where he shows Dr. Donald Blake his face. And somewhat unprofessionally, Blake said, there's nothing medical science can do. Nothing. Oh, no. In the name of heaven, I never dreamt it would be like that. I don't think that's what they teach you in med school. But what if, you have to think, what if he had been able to do something? Does that mean Dr. Doom would have turned good? He certainly would have lost a lot of his motivation for being a villain, his old Stan Lee motivation. But there are some complications. Dr. Donald Blake is briefly separated from his walking cane that he has to smash on the ground to become Thor. It's easily resolved, and there's a kind of perfunctory battle between Thor and Dr. Doom at the end, but Thor rather easily defeats Dr. Doom and also disarms his entire kingdom. Dr. Doom has a barrage of missiles pointed at the rest of Europe. Thor just knocks them out with one try, and Dr. Doom can do nothing except just sit there and watch. The issue, and also the issue where the Abomination, the old Hulk villain, tricks Thor into fighting a celestial being called the Stranger. Those issues aren't Buscema at his best. He's still finding his way, and they're still trying to find the right inker for him. Vince Colletta is not the right inker for John Buscema. He's great for Jack Kirby. He's terrible for John Buscema, and they kept pairing the two of them. I don't know why. And because of that shakiness in some of Buscema's earliest issues on Thor, you have one person at Marvel very carefully watching to make sure that things are okay. To make sure the art on the page, panel by panel, is okay. And that person, of course, is John Romita Sr. We've mentioned John Romita Sr. before, the famous artist for Spider-Man. Sort of became the unofficial art in-house czar. Stan Lee trusted him to make sure that the visuals, that the panels, that the flow, that the faces, that the costume designs, that the book of each character was consistent. And usually Romita was hands-off on that sort of thing. Usually he would allow that to sort of happen, and he would brush it up here and there as needed. With some of these early Buscema issues, he does a little more than that. For instance, you have this panel, right, where Dr. Doom is instructing his driver to use a transportation gun on Donald Blake to transport him to Dr. Doom's location in Latveria. But the rest of the page, that is John Romita Sr. That is not John Romita Sr. inking John Buscema. That's just John Romita Sr. drawing the panel. He just draws this one. That is just John Romita Sr., as is this. That is just a different artist than this. Which I always thought was kind of funny, although I have to admit, a nitpicker that I am, when I bought that issue on the stands, I thought, what? Dr. Doom has a gun that you can point at somebody to teleport them? Then why isn't he the ruler of the world? Why wouldn't he use that on the Fantastic Four and teleport them into outer space? The surface of the moon, the bottom of the ocean. What? Anyway, once Buscema got his feet underneath him, and once he started getting big, epic scripts of the kind that he really likes, this is the problem with Thor, the character of Thor. He's a superhero who's also a god. And you get that problem really highlighted in the beginning of this epic collection, when Jack Kirby's still drawing it. There's Thor. These guys with guns are about to hijack a truck, and Thor is creeping around on the rocks above them to stop them from hijacking a truck. And then Thor walks up to the police. He's carrying their guns. What? The God of Thunder? The Prince of Asgard? The heir to Asgard is going to be lurking around on a highway? Why would Thor even care if these guys succeeded or not? That doesn't work. for the character. The more cosmic you make him, the better he is. Much as I love his occasional dust-up with the Absorbing Man, I much prefer it when Thor is in otherworldly realms. And boy, oh boy, Michael was right when he says that Buscema preferred that. He prefers the big fantasy epic, the big fantasy settings, all that kind of thing. And he gets it in the second half of this epic collection. This is the peril of Marvel's epic collections, is that they're big, so they're not cheap. This was $40. Most of them are. So when you're, at the comic shop and you're thinking about getting an epic collection, you had better be sure. I am often testing to see that enough of the volume is stuff that I really want, as opposed to reprinting stuff around what I really want, where I still have to pay the full price. There are a couple of Avengers epic collections, for instance, that reprint a large part of a very good run on the Avengers, drawn by Steve Epting, where the Black Widow commands the team, and Hercules is on the team, and the Black Knight, and Circe, and whatnot. But in that run, when those issues were appearing every other month, or for 2 months in a row, there'd be a horrible filler issue with artwork I wouldn't put out on the sideboard. And if you're going to get the epic collections of those, you're going to get all of that stuff that you're never going to look at again that you don't want. I wouldn't, if somebody offered me a completely mint condition copy of one of these Neil Adams Thors, I wouldn't take it for free. And it's in this collection. There's nothing I can do about that, but I was going to get this anyway, because the second half of this collection is my second favorite Thor storyline of all time. This character's been around for 50 years. I've been reading him faithfully that whole time. My favorite Thor epic collection is also, a Thor storyline is also featured in an epic collection. I am certain that Michael K. Vaughan will get to it eventually. And it won't take much trouble, much effort for those of you who are Marvel fans to know what it is. But my second favorite Thor storyline is the second half of this book, and that is the Infinity Saga. The Infinity Saga, a gigantic story in which, slowly percolating over many, many issues, we learn that Thor's father, Odin, in Asgard, is worried about a threat from the world beyond. He won't elaborate on what it is until it becomes time for that issue, where Thor returns to Asgard. He is now finished with fiddling around with the Abomination. He's now finished with fiddling around with Doctor Doom or hired gunmen on the road hijacking something or other. Instead, he goes to talk to his father, Odin, about the menace of the world beyond. There they are, standing in space. Will you look at that artwork? Just look at that artwork. It has nothing anymore looking back to Kirby. Instead, it's purely John Buscema. It doesn't care about anything else. And thankfully, I think this is Joe Sinnott that inks this. That's got to be right. Yes. Joe Sinnott inks this. So fortunately, we have an inker who's letting Buscema do his best work. Thor never looked like that in the past. He never looked like a human being before. He always looked like a cardboard cutout. And here we have the menace of the world beyond, a gigantic hand-like vast thing that's swallowing up world after world. Odin doesn't know what it is, but he's worried about it. Because in addition to swallowing up those words, one other thing is happening. The Odin sword is unsheathing a little bit more every day, and when the Odin sword comes out of its scabbard, the world will end. I've mentioned before, this is an odd thing for Odin to create, and it's an odd thing for him to keep around like a Ming vase on a narrow table. But he does, and every day he has to shove the sword back into the scabbard to postpone doomsday. And he thinks the two are connected. Thor immediately wants to say, well, who's behind the world beyond? Who is this Infinity character? Surely it must be Galactus. But we're told that Galactus is sleeping in between meals. And it's not the malevolent Mangog. He's been dealt with. And Loki doesn't have enough power. Odin has sent the Warriors 3. He sent Fandral, Volstagg, and Hogun into the hand of that darkness in order for them to see what they can learn about it. And that's why he wants Thor back in Asgard, to find out what's going on and to hold down the fort while Odin goes to examine the world beyond directly himself. He goes himself and leaves Thor behind. And this storyline goes on for 6 issues. And it's amazingly good. I remember reading these issues, paying out my 15 cents for these issues and thinking, this is grand stuff. Just wonderful. And for the first time, I was no longer pining for Jack Kirby's artwork, because Buscema is every bit as good. And the quotable bits are incredibly quotable. Eventually, Thor finally decides he's going to go to the world beyond himself. He doesn't trust errand boys. He wants to go and find out what happens to his father himself. He goes to a nameless world and finds a being there that insists on killing him, a four-armed being that insists on killing him, rather than having him despoil the name of Infinity. And every time Thor strikes the character down, an energy beam strikes the character back up again. Look at this artwork, though. There's Odin facing the swirling mists of Infinity, insisting that he will not be conquered. This vast amount of energy that Odin commands. Look at this. Look at these panel arrangements. That is just amazing. Just incredible. That is what you get if you give John Buscema a great inker and let him do this high fantasy stuff. There's a great moment when the energy beam revives this creature, and Thor has had enough. Look at that panel. He's had enough, and he says to this being, "As thou art strong, so Thor is strong. As thou canst fight, so Thor canst fight. But as thou be mortal, Thor be god of thunder." So they just bash it out like that. Just fantastic stuff. And we move on into the storyline, trying to figure out who Infinity could be, who could have the power. At first, we're faked out. We think it might be Hela, the goddess of death. That black hand is obliterating worlds. Maybe it's Hela with a massive power upgrade. Turns out not to be her. Odin eventually finds out who Infinity is. And I don't know if even after all this time I should spoil it. I don't know if I should. Without Odin around to push the Odin sword back into its scabbard, it is still coming out of its scabbard. The Asgardians are trying with mechanisms to push it back in or prevent it from pulling itself out. So look at that. That is pure John Buscema. That is not Jack Kirby. Kirby would have done every bit as elaborate a page, but it wouldn't have looked like this. You know, he would have laid it out, designed it completely differently. Much less the far more realistic anatomy that Buscema was famous for in these early years. Odin finds out who Infinity is, and eventually Thor finds out too. And there's a panel here. It is great. There's one issue here where Buscema is inked by Jim Mooney. Being inked by Jim Mooney is usually a bad idea. He's a very limited artist. He was a fan favorite when he was drawing things like Supergirl a million years ago. But as an inker on better artists, he's usually a bad idea. But the issue where he inks Buscema is great. And there's one panel here that will give you a hint of the identity of Infinity. It's just possible that you might guess who it is. But eventually, Odin prevails. Eventually he prevails, strides out of that energy nimbus all by himself. All hail Odin. You know, everything is better. But Odin didn't die. He didn't die at the hands of Infinity. And Hela, the goddess of death, was clearly expecting him to. And Odin, in the midst of their celebration over their triumph, Odin tells the assembled Asgardians, "Since Hela couldn't take me, she's going to come for Thor." Again, she encounters him in the world beyond, but here she's going to make a concerted effort to come for the god of thunder. And Odin's plan is very simple. You must go to Earth, assume your Donald Blake identity, and not become Thor again. The minute you become Thor, she'll know where you are, and that will be the end. So you must remain Donald Blake. It naturally bums everybody out. but Thor does that. He goes to Earth and becomes Dr. Donald Blake. And we get a wonderful aside panel here, a page of Hela talking to her old hag of an assistant, innocently wondering. It's not a supervillain monologue. She's innocently wondering why people don't like her. Why don't people like her? She says, "Why do the living fear my touch? Do I not bring peace to those who's long borne life's burden? Do I not bring rest at the end of life's weary journey? Do I not banish pain from all who may suffer? Do I not cure all ills, put an end to all wounds? Why then must men hate me, fear my approach? In truth I am gentle, in truth I am fair." And we have Buscema giving us these, there she is, touching the head of a terminally ill patient. Here she is taking the soul of a dead soldier. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. But nevertheless, although she is portrayed sympathetically, she is still going to come after Thor. And she goes to Earth. And it's another great sequence where she shows up. She disguises herself as a mortal being, but she's 7 feet tall, so it doesn't really help much. And she encounters 2 muggers. This was an old New York. The New York that is reflected in Marvel Comics here was rife with muggings. I myself had an attempted mugging performed on me when I was in Harlem, probably 40, 45 years ago. Once upon a time, it was a staple feature of New York society that you could see crime, you could see graffiti, you could see litter, huge amounts of smog, and also violence. It isn't true anymore. Mayor Bloomberg was a lot more frightening, and Hela, the goddess of death. So New York is now a playground for the ultra-wealthy, and things like that don't happen. But they once upon a time did, and Hela has no sooner set foot on Earth than 2 men attempt to mug her. And it doesn't go well. It doesn't go well. She says, "It was not yet your time, but since life means so little to you as you would take another, I shall hasten your entrance into my silent realm." And look at the coloring job there. It's not a skull. They just convulse, and then they're dead. Wonderful stuff. So she comes to Earth. She is a force to be reckoned with, but not completely a villain. And she realizes quickly that the way to get Thor to appear is to endanger mortals. So she does. And Thor appears. Duly, he appears. And she claims him for her own. That as a god I lived, as a god I die, Thor tells her. Then all is said. The time is come. But it hasn't. Because the Asgardians have taken the one desperate step that is all they can think of, and that is to show Odin what's happening. He knows what's happening. But if he sees it, then the father might overcome the king, and he might take steps, and he does. He does. He appears, and he's in an Odin snit. Odin, it is indeed Odin. I, the be-all, the end-all, the word, the way, have come. He appears, because he has an ultimatum for Hela. He has an ultimatum for her. She doesn't think anything of it, but he says, "Hela, hear my words." Look at this same artwork. That is just so incredible. "Hela, hear my words. Though I be the power and the light, the judgment and the will, though I be sovereign supreme of all that was, is, and yet shall be, I be one thing more. I be father to the thunder god. And I say thee, Thor shall not die." And Hela tells him, "Oh, don't wave your power scepter at me. You know perfectly well I answer to no one. I have decreed that Thor must die, and even Odin won't slay me." But he does. He kills her to save his son. It's Thor who has to tell Odin, "That's not possible. You've just removed death from existence. The world will be completely overpopulated. Plants, insects, humans. The whole universe needs death. You can't kill her. Even if it's to cost my life, you have to bring her back to life." He says, "Alas, father, we both know what thou must do. Hela must live, and Thor must die. There can be no other way." And Odin says, "I pray for thee, beloved son. May the mighty Thor bring glory to Valhalla, as he hath brought glory to the grieving Odin." Look at the artwork here. Look at the decision to make Odin in shadow there. That highlights the tears in his eyes here. Perfect. He brings Hela back to life. And she begins the aging of the thunder god. She is slowly drawing his life. And we have this wonderful, tender scene where Odin is holding Thor. "Thou art a god to the end. Valhalla awaits thee." But again, there's one last gambit that Odin can do. And that is to bring the lovely Sif, Thor's beloved, to his side. Sif immediately pleads with Hela. What does she say? "Hela, though thou be queen of death, thou art a woman too. Surely love hath touched thine heart." Hela says, "Why speakest thou to me of love?" And Sif is pleading with her and says, "'Tis all I know, 'tis all there be. Without it, life hath no meaning and no joy. Thou couldst still save the dying Thor. Thou must, O Hela. The regal Odin may not beg, for he be lord of Asgard. But I am a woman, as thou art a woman. I beg, I plead, Sif doth implore thee. Or if my words should move thee not, this last request I make thee. But do but spare the mighty Thor, and take Sif's life in forfeit." And there she's kneeling before Hela. And here we have Odin grieving, and there John Romita Sr. once again had his hand in the artwork, but it's a lot less obtrusive, so you don't really mind. And Hela says, "Thou wouldst die to save thy true beloved?" Sif asked if Hela had e'er known love, and now I answer thee, nay. But at last I doth know what it mean, not even death may crush it. And she revives Thor. And they it's a wonderful, wonderful moment, and they return to Asgard and find it infested with giants and with Loki, and the epic collection goes on from there. But the guts of it were the Infinity Saga. Those 7 or 8 issues that were the Infinity Saga. Not just the story of Odin fighting Infinity, learning who Infinity is, and finally winning, but also the 2-issue aftermath where Thor's life is in danger, and we don't know what's going to happen. The cover of this issue, Thor number 190. Oh, I loved it so much. When I bought it on the newsstand, I practically read it in the newsstand because in the dry goods store because I couldn't even wait to get back home to read it. Look at that cover. And so to die. Oh, just awesome. I know I always say John Buscema can't do really good covers, but when he's good, he's really good. And that is an example of what I mean by the peril of epic collections, because I love the Infinity Saga. I don't love the end. Kirby's end on Thor is crap. Neil Simon's brief tour on Thor is crap. And some of the adventures that Buscema draws for Thor after the Infinity Saga aren't all that interesting. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. So ideally, this epic collection would be just the Infinity Saga. And fortunately, for that, I have the Marvel Masterworks. The requisite volume of Marvel Masterworks did have just the Infinity Saga, just those issues and nothing else. Except there are 2 issues at the end there with the Silver Surfer and Durok the Destroyer. But most of this volume, this is the hardcover volume. This is, see what I mean? This is number 10. It's preceded by number 9. It's followed by number 11. That's not true in the Epic Collection. But here we have the same panels, the same artwork, only in a hardcover. So I have the Marvel Masterworks volume. I have the Epic Collection, and I also have the original issues. So they are in a box in my comics closet. So I have loved this storyline many times. This is the first time that one of Michael's Epic Wednesday picks is, for me, just an absolute bases-clearing home run. Not the whole of the volume, but the Infinity Saga I absolutely love. There's only one Thor storyline that I love more. And we'll get to it eventually, but not next time. According to Michael, we're doing Captain America next time. And Captain America can be very hit or miss, especially for me. So we shall see. We'll see what we get to. I know that this Epic Wednesday was long, but it's the Infinity Saga. I could talk about that saga, detail by detail, and panel by panel, for 3 hours. So consider yourself lucky. But I'll be back next Wednesday. Thank you, BookTube.